What's up, guys? Welcome to the first video of PokerVIP.com series of, well, 20NL videos, I guess. They're just going to make two of the damn things. We're hanging out at 20NL up here on Global Poker, and we're just going to jump right into the action. Looks like we're playing relatively shorthand on one table, and we have a couple of regs. We got this Tyler Durden bro. I remember him from a couple of other games that we played. Some bro named Samoa. We got a read on this dude. And we also have Jimbo AK, which, if you guys did not know, is Jimmy Longo in the Twitch world and on Twitter. We know him. I don't know if he knows us or not, though. Somebody in his stream might tell him. I think he's streaming right now. He gives us the free ride. That's good. We'll invite him to check things out later after we play. But yeah, let's just jump right up into this motherfucker. What the hell is going on here, people? What do you mean 40 minutes? This is going to be a 30-minute long video, you numbskulls. Alright, we're going to raise it up here. We've got Queen King in the small blind. We got a flat call. This is a pretty terrible board texture for us, so we're just going to check and give this one up. Can't really do anything here. Clearly we can bet our club combos. Clearly we can check a good number of hands that will also do other things. And here we're just going to completely give up with a spot where we just have no equity whatsoever. I think we can value bet on this river, though. He doesn't have too many better kings here unless he has like King 8 and didn't bet the turn or something. We just get a pair that calls us a lot of the time. Sneaky little value bet. Life's easy. What are these guys doing sitting down with two funky-ass dollars? That's kind of whack. We're going to fold the Queen 3 offsuit on the old button. And we're waiting for the big blind over here on the other table. We got Jack Henley 4xing it. Actually, is that a min raise? Is that a... What are you doing? You don't min raise. That's weird. And it looks like our good friend Jay Longo is going to flat call. Ha-ha! He's going to flat call. He checks. And I think Jim should be betting pretty much everything on this board because it's such a good board for the dude that's flat calling, and not a great board for a guy who's min-raising, but he's, you know, a min-raising guy can have way more combos on that board, so it's not inherently true. It could be the case that dude's got all kinds of shit, but versus a checking range on that board, you're okay to kind of go bananas. You don't need to really concern yourself with the hoo-has and the whatnots. You'll be alright. We're just going to go ahead and check the 4-6 offsuit, out of position. We flop the nothing, so we're just going to check. And we're going to fold this combination. He checks back on an ace turn. We're just going to give up. We don't even have a gut shot. And he has plenty of ace-x combos. And you might be kind of passive with hands that aren't going to fold anyway, like 9-10, something like that. I think it's reasonable when he checks the turn to go ahead and bet the river, because he doesn't figure to have an ace as often now. And he doesn't figure to have a king either. So we're just going to go in and overbet and try to get him to fold some sort of a remedial pair. Like, if we're going to get a fold from one pair, an overbet makes a lot of sense. We are still going to get called some percent of the time. But if you're going to bluff in this spot, I like an overbet. We could easily check on the turn with a king because of the ace on the turn. And if he has an ace, it puts him in a really polarizing scenario. And a lot of guys just they fold to overbets because they're scared, regardless of what this guy does. You end up getting called, and he just has a 9. So I'm assuming that if we're going to get called there by a guy with a 9... then that is not the guy that we want to overbet against. That's a guy to just leave the fuck alone and overbet for value. We're going to go ahead and lead out here with our 2 pair. Can't assume that in a 5-way pot on this type of texture that we're really going to get shit done. And I think with this guy having like not many blinds, we can just shove 10 big blinds here. Tournament strategy. Get the hell out of my house. We're going to be all in against this person no matter what. A 9 is not amazing just because they're beating us now with Queen 9 and 10 Jack. But nonetheless, with all the flush draws and Queen X with no second pairs, hands like Queen Jack itself, Queen 10, just an easy shove. Somehow, some way, we've got fold equity. I couldn't tell you what that dude was calling and then folding. I really couldn't. We're going to go ahead and isolate with the King Deuce. It is a bit on the risky side with these two homies back there. Probably just pass on that for the most part, but nonetheless, we've gotten ourselves into this situation. We've made our bed, so to speak, so we'll lie all over that shit. And I think we're just going to shove this flop. If he had an ace, he's probably shoveling it pre-flop. And we do get it in against some diamond combos, I guess. Oh, no. He actually had a queen and a diamond. That's miserable. Sad face. Yeah, well, he doesn't really ever have an ace. I would assume that he doesn't really have many aces, so I don't mind the shove, even though it's a pretty low equity shove. Homie's got $1, you know what I mean? I mean, just, you know, he had the best hand with king high sometimes. Like, if he's calling with queen 10 there pre-flop, he's probably calling with all kinds of dumb shit, and half of that dumb shit's gonna have to fold. Because the other half is gonna have a diamond and never fold. So I don't mind it. Never feels good, man. But yeah, we got ourselves into that scenario because we should not have isolated Boxing Critic. Shouldn't have isolated that dude. I'm going to pot it up with our pocket queens. See if we can't get it back from that guy. Can't just let this dude run around with our few coins. We have to come back and avenge our stupidity. See what Boxing Critic's got going on over here. Probably nothing. I'm assuming nothing. And this is a bluff catcher. He doesn't have ace-king. He has very few king-queens. And it ends up being a good spot for us, even though he does have king-10 and king-jack. We are just going to get the money in. And the turn card is kind of a bad bluff catcher now, in a sense that even though we block king-queen, he can definitely just... We're blocking queen-jack and queen-10, and we're blocking the heart combos. That being said, he could just have like a 5. He could have an 8. You could have all kinds of shit and just shovel it in here. So I mean, we're just going to have to call it off here because we're blocking the primary value combos like ace-king's pre-flop, and then king-queen we block. So he basically has like king-10 and king-jack, which we're going to lose to. And this is a bad combo to call with from a game theory perspective, but this is not an optimal opponent. As you can see, our opponent just picked up a pair to go along with his draw, and you know, he didn't realize that he should have just checked that on the turn, most likely, rather than turn that into a bluff. So that is why we have to call in that spot. Theoretically, it's not a good calling combo because we're blocking straight draws and backdoor flush draws that would be bluffing, but at the same time, it is a good combo because ace-king gets it in pre-flop, pocket, you know, queen-king is blocked down to 6 combinations, and, you know, people do crazy shit, especially a little short stack bro like that. So we did get our money back. So we have Jay Longo flatting us, and he's going to have all kinds of stuff to be flatting in this spot, and we do block ace-king. So we're going to go ahead and see bet the flop. It's a better board texture for us in general, and that we have the strongest kings in the deck. Even though he does have some kings, he's not in amazing shape with them. I think we are going to fold here to that. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and bet. This hand is not going to get to showdown very well, and it's a very dry board texture. So when he calls in this spot, we don't always want to be double barreling here, just because he does have a king X, and we are blocking some of the hands he would fold on the turn, like ace high and pocket sevens, and we don't have any additional equity in this scenario, and we're really just making him fold something like a 4. Kind of a bad run out in general, because we're not beating a 4 here either, so we're just going to end up having to give up on this river. Can we call here with any suited hand? Alright, let's call with any suited hand. And we are just going to check the 7 deuce. Unfortunately for us, we are faced with the bet, and he probably just has like king 10 or some shit. There is not really much of a reason for him to be bluffing with ace high, and pocket pairs aren't really always value betting. So, not much you can do. But definitely a c-bet. Definitely a c-bet, give up with that combo. Pretty low-grade ace for the most part. We have a limper under the gun. Jimmy's coming hard for them dudes, so we're going to get out of his way. Ace 7 over here, which will raise if it folds to us, but otherwise we won't. Yeah, 3-4 offsuit, we're mostly going to be folding. We could 3-bet versus that min-raise with ace 7, but it's kind of like meh. We'll have plenty of better spots if he's going to be min-raising a ton. Not much of a reason to go all crazy. to go all whack job, willy-nilly. That's the last thing you want to do, is go whack job, willy-nilly. Jack 6 suited in the folding range. Not much to really say there. See what else we got coming up here in just a second. See if there's anything sweet up in here. Nope. But Jimmy's in a motherfucking hand. See what happens on the Ace-King-4 board texture. Checks to him. This guy could have King-X. You know, he's got a protected range. He's going to have some Ace-X. I think you can be betting if you don't have a King here. A lot of the time, check. You have a mixed strategy with Ace-X. Mostly just check King-X. Not really betting any Kings in this spot. And he bets the reverse on the turn. Takes it down. Life is easy. Your opponent often does not get to showdown when they have a check-check. Take a check-check line, then just get the hell out of dodge. You can call a check-check line the checkout line, because they check, and then they're out of chips, because they checked and folded all of them every time. Check, fold, check, fold. Happens at a relatively high frequency. 3-6 offsuit in the big blind, can't do much. I don't know much, but I know I stacked you. However the fuck that song goes. You know it by now. But not me, I don't know it by now. Alright. Full pot size bet from Samoa here on Jack 9-5 with 2 hearts. See what Tyler Durden does. He's kind of in a shove or fold scenario with that stack size behind, honestly. It's slightly crazy. Anyway, we have 6-7 offsuit. We have Jack 5 offsuit. Unplayable scenarios for the most part. There's a case to be made for raising 6-7 against the tightest of buttons, but clearly with this guy's stack size and the fact that we're at a lower stakes table means we're probably not going to ever be raising that wide. But you want to always look for the exceptions to the rule. Because if you have a guy on the button who's just not defending enough, then you might open up your frequency there to a number of hands, like 30 to 35%. I'm not saying we're getting that at 6-7 offsuit that frequently. That guy would have to basically just be drooling on himself, taking a nap, you know, eating a urinal mint, just anything that revolves around non-thinking, and then we could maybe raise every single time. Like if that shit was literally your button, bam. Yeah, we've got that 70-cent stack trying to milk that board. Yeah, that is funny. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? 10-5 offsuit, can't do anything with this combo. And 5-4, same thing. Just a couple of folds here, unfortunately. Let's see what else we have going on here. We have a limp from JRW. Arc, are you going to get involved here, sir? He makes it $1 to go. A little 5x isolation raise. I like that. JR is going to flat call. That's a board texture that's probably going to be better for the guy that limped. So if I were Arc, I would be checking a high percentage on this board. And as you can see, JR wastes no time min-raising him, which is still going to put Arc in a lot of weird scenarios. I'm assuming that Arc has some piece of the board. You can't really be betting low equity hands in this spot. And now he's just kind of boned. I mean, he could have a 9x combo and be chopping, I suppose. But I expect that to hop a lot of the time. So on a board texture like that, even if you have the initiative because you were the raiser preflop, when you're out of position, especially on a board texture that favors the other guy, you just have to get the hell out of dodge. You really want to consider who does the board texture favor, because you are going to be heads up in online cash games a lot. That's going to differ from live cash games where you have multi-way pots a higher percent of the time. Even then, you still want to go a bit by board texture. Like if the board is Ace-King-3, and you're in a live game and you were the pre-flop raiser, a lot of your opponents, if you triple barrel there with any two cards, are just going to give you credit for having ace-king, and they will be willing to make some really big folds because they're just like, you just have ace-king, especially the regs. You know, it's not like they're going to put you on like ace-queen. So you can get away with murder if the perception of your opponent is such that it allows you to do so. So you should be looking for those opportunities. But in an online cash game, you're just going to be playing heads up way more frequently. So it really does behoove you to get a good picture and a good feel for who the board texture favors. And the reason why it's more favorable for one of the guys rather than the other is because the way that a calling range works is different than a way that a raising range works, and a limping range that calls is definitely working a bit differently than an isolating out of position from the blinds range. And you kind of have to get a good common feel for what's in or out of these ranges. And of course, you could exploit that guy. Like if you knew that guy was going to fold 90% of the time, first thing I would say is that that's a little bit optimistic on that board texture, just because there's a lot of shit that can go down there. A lot of hands interact with that board. And, you know, you kind of want to look for board textures where it hits one portion of the deck, but then the other portion bricks. And if you catch your opponent with the other portion, he's going to fold. And if you can barrel your opponent efficiently off of a portion of the hands that would call, then you got a pretty profitable scenario. When think about the subsets of the deck, you have like the low end, you have the 2 through the 5s, you know, you got your low pairs, you have your low suited connectors, then you have the middling portion of the deck, you got your 5s through your 8s and 9s, and then you have middling pairs, and you have your middling suited connectors. And then you have the upper part of the deck, you have all of your over pairs, your big pairs, whatever, and then you have your 10s through aces. So all of those heads, let's say excuse me. So like on 2, 6, 9, that basically hits the bottom two subsets of the deck. It doesn't really hit the top subset other than having some flush draws and having a couple of hands that have a backdoor straight draw, like King Jack of Diamonds is a pretty reasonable hand in that spot to bet, or King Jack of Spades. Any sort of backdoor straight draw that also has a backdoor flush draw, or at the very minimum like an Ace X of Diamonds, something with a backdoor flush draw at the minimum. And you can use those hands to have as part of your bluffing frequency. We're going to fold here with the Queen 4 offsuit. Oh man, we would have had a flush draw. Damn it all. Would have been the nut flush draw too. Ain't that just a shame? It is. We have the King 4 offsuit variety. We're just going to fold with short stack bro in the blinds. Not much to really do. Kind of crazy. Anything else going on here? Anything else going on here? Come on. You can do it. Alright. We've got King Jack. We're probably going to play this one. Going to fold the Queen 4 offsuit. And we get a raise. I don't want to 3-bet this. Usually when I'm looking at my variables, looking at my options, I kind of start at the top and go down. So if I'm going to 3-bet, it's not going to be this combo. It's offsuit. It's in the cutoff. Got a short stack guy on the button. So I'm going to pass on that spot. If it was suited, I probably would consider 3-betting it. I would knock other players out. They wouldn't be able to realize their equity. The king at least serves as a blocker to some portion of his stack off range. We're in position. He could just fold. And there's a lot of things going for us. And King Jack otherwise would be a flat call. Now if we flat call, the doofus behind us can shove, and that's kind of annoying. These guys can squeeze and put us in a tough spot. So I'd much rather be the guy 3-betting, but, you're going to definitely find tables with the dynamics that are such that you could flat. A lot of tables, especially live, are too passive, and you're going to be able to get to a flop a really high % of the time, and then from there, you just get to play good, solid, equity, balanced poker. But sometimes, online, you're not even going to be able to get to a flop. Or sometimes live. I mean, in any format of poker that you're playing, you're just like, how easily am I getting to a flop? And use that as a deciding factor. If you have players behind you that are passive, they're not squeezing a lot, then you could be more inclined to call. And when you have, a table where everybody's going fucking ape shit, then that's not a very good spot for us. So we have the 10 of clubs in the spot, we have a gut shot, and I could have this in my check call or check raising range. I think we are going to put it in the check raising range this time, though. I do like this. I do have all the 2 pairs, and I have a lot of sets. I don't have pocket queens, but I have the rest of it. Now I have a double gutter. It's an overcard to a hand like queen king, And I definitely want a club on the river here. I'm definitely bluffing a club. I'm value betting a 9 or a king, and I'm probably going to be triple barreling a high percent of the time. We get the fold. That's good. That's good. I like that. We got queen 10 of the hearted variety. We're going to be 3-betting this, part of our linear 3-bet range from the small blind, especially against a min raise and a flat call. And we're going to make this 6x out of position, make it pretty difficult for them to be calling. I don't mind making a smaller size here, but I think that you want to make it a little bit bigger out of position for sure. You don't want them to just be flatting and playing poker easily. It makes it a little bit more difficult for you. And again, we just have a gut shot and an overcard, just an easy shove against their stack. And if, you know, our opponent flops top pair again, so be it. He calls with a pair of 8s. We have a lot of equity. We brick. And life goes on. We are going to isolate here with the ace and the 10. We have jack 5 of clubs on the other table. We do get the call. And we flop second pair, third pair. And a backdoor flush draw. This is a board that pretty bad for us in general. When he leads here, because we have the backdoor flush draw, because we have the gut shot, we're going to call. But this is definitely not a great spot. Like, he's probably going to have a straight here a lot. Maybe he doesn't use that sizing. Now, God forbid, hopefully he doesn't. But, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a spot where now at least we're beating king, queen and stuff. I think we can go ahead and bet. Probably just going to take it down here a lot. Get called by a hand like king jack. He could just be leading any king. Oh, man. What a stupid spot. So, you know, unfortunately for us, we're probably going to have to fold. I think my opponent is going to have value combos of king 10, queen 10. He's never going to check raise here with a flush draw, and he's never going to check raise here with a 1-pair hand. And yes, if I had checked back, then we would get to see a river card and maybe be able to show our hand down. But I do think when your opponent checks the turn, that most of your opponents are not going to check raise you. Most of your opponents are just going to check and then have some sort of a calling range with a hand like top pair and have some portion of a folding range. And I think check raising is probably going to be the least likely thing that you're going to see. And the reason why I'm folding in that spot is because even though we're sometimes getting bluffed by a weird-ass hand like 10 jack, it's his value range really does crush us. I mean, he can have all of those straights. You know, we're going to get roasted by the ace jacks, and that is 12 combos. And the jack 9 maybe has a full 16 of those. Like, if he has a full 16 jack 9s, then life is very miserable for us in that spot. And yeah, so like, even though you have trip 10s, his value range dominates the living hell out of us. He doesn't really have any 1-pair hands. So if we have equity in that spot, it's because he's value betting a worse 10, and that's kind of unlikely given the action. Even though it's not impossible, it's kind of unlikely. And, you know, there are, I guess, a few combos of the same hand, but that's not really going to do us any good, because if he's got that, then he definitely has the rest of those combos that are going to beat us as well. So we're not doing very well in that spot against his value range. We're kind of getting annihilated. So our equity, if we have equity there, is going to come from the times that our opponent is bluffing. And as you know, a lot of your opponents in these games just aren't bluffing enough. So just, you know, that's one of those spots where you just have to realize that. I think that if you look at your hand from an absolute hand strength perspective and you get wrapped up in the idea that your hand is strong trips, and, you know, you'll start to sort of lose yourself in the moment, and you'll say anything to convince yourself that calling down there is going to be the correct play, when the main thing that you need to focus on is what are his value combos, how am I doing against his value range, what are his bluffs, if I have equity in this spot, where does my equity come from, is it very likely that that is the case, and in a lot of cases it just isn't. So I mean, I don't mind betting the turn against 1-pair hands, worse 10s that play strangely, whatever. But once we get check raised there, you just have to assume that he has a big old splattering of hands like ace jack and jack 9. I mean, he just has a lot of straights in that spot, and he could have queen 10 and king 10. I guess there's some weirdo world where he has queens or kings too. But obviously, that's going to be very few and far between, and we're not really going to be able to give him credit for that. That being said, we are behind his value range, and it's not a great spot for us to try to, you know, bluff catch over 2 streets, whatever it is. Like, we're not getting the money in the spot, and we're not getting the money in that spot. and his bluffs are all we're really hoping for to get our equity. So like if we have equity, it's because he's bluffing too much. And is it likely that he's bluffing too much in that type of scenario? When he leads out and then he check raises his turn? No. I would say that from some random asshole on Global Poker, that's an extremely strong line. So like I said, I don't mind the bet. I could definitely see a world where we check back against a guy who's just going, you know, ape shit with check raises, but that's exactly the kind of hand that you'd want to bet call against a guy who's going ape shit, because you'd much rather check a king and bet trips. Because with trips, obviously, you're the best hand against a maniac a good % of the time. So his frequency's too off and you're scared of getting check raised because you don't want to call down, then you should be betting this combo, and you should be checking one pair hands, more vulnerable combos, draws that want to realize their equity, and you should just have a tighter range of hands that bet that can stand action, because this guy's putting in way too much action. All right, we're going to go ahead and fold here with the queen and the 5. Not much to be said for that. 9-10 offsuit variety. Ace king. And we're going to raise that up. See what goes on here. And we're going to fold with the short stacker in the big blind. Our hands are kind of tied at this table. Kind of tied. Right into the old king-queen. Alright, jack 5 offsuit, down the drain. I believe we're just going to flat call here with our king-queen rather than 3-bet and open up the action and have weird shit happen. We don't really have to have too many squeezes here. I mean, we could have a few of these for bluffs. It's not really a necessity. So that's a bad board for Samoa. He doesn't have that many suited 9s. He's like jack 9 suited, 9-10 suited, 8-9 suited. You know, maybe he's got ace 9 suited as well. So he's like maybe 8, maybe a few more. He doesn't have a ton of 9x suited. I would assume that Big Daddy doesn't have a lot either. The guys that can have a bunch of 9s are ourselves and Tyler. Tyler can have a bunch of 9s here. He bets that sizing, and we're just going to fold just because he kind of got to it first, so to speak. And the other dudes in the pot still exist. So there's a world where they have pocket 6s, or they have ace 9 suited, and they're slow playing. So we're not going to come over the top there with a bluff, even though it does look really strong from a line-wise. Tyler can definitely have more 9s than the other two guys. So we don't want to just go bananas there. And of course, the fact that he can have a lot of 9s will protect the fact that he's, you know, also capable of betting when he just has a 6, when he just has second pair, when he has pocket 7s. He's able to knock some of us out of the hand, protect his equity, increase the frequency at which he'll win the hand, and at the same time, a non-zero percentage of the time, win the pot outright without having to show down his hand or play future streets. So there's a lot of value there in all of those things. Right here, we're just going to go ahead and bomb it just because we're not trying to get multi-way action. And against this dude, we're just going to give up. It's an ace-high board. We're like screwed equity-wise. We're just kind of boned. Can't do much with it. Tyler calls, and we have a queen-high board. Queen-high board is pretty much the worst board texture ever when you're the 3-better because your opponent has a glut of queens, so king-high board is way better for the 3-better. So we're just going to check and see what happens. We're just going to give it the old 1, 2, whatever the fuck. Okay. And we're just going to check. If we can get a free showdown here, that certainly would be awesome. We are going to beat hands like ace-jack and ace-10. I think this is a world where we mostly are just folding. Usually if he's betting here, he just has a pair. And the pair is going to beat ace-king. So we're just going to have to fold. No reason to do anything crazy by check raising the river or anything weird like that. I think we can definitely 3-bet on the button here versus the min raise again. We'll play this hand and then we will go to part 2 of the 20NL videos. Right at about the 30-minute mark. I like that everybody has a full stack at this table as well, so we can actually have the leeway to do something like this. Yeah, this is a pretty good spot to do so. We get flat called. I'm assuming we're getting three-way action if that is the case. This guy just like fucking shoves. Jesus Christ, what's happening tonight? We are just not having anything go our way. I'm going to raise it up with ace-jack. We're going to fold d5-9. But you're going to have all those kinds of variables for sure. So you got to keep that shit mentally clear. Don't worry about the variance and just do your best and play the next hand that you're dealt. Those are the things that you control. Was the squeeze okay? Yeah, I don't mind the squeeze at all. Didn't work out. We didn't realize our equity. This dude shoved. What are you going to do? You just fold and move on with your life. Not too big of a concern. Now, on one hand here, we have the ace of diamonds. On the other hand, this guy's short. We're out of position of two players. And the board texture is more favorable for them. So even though we have one variable going for us here, we're just going to check and give up. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video.